to Spark Success podcast. I'm your host, Liz Hamlet, and I'm a success coach and business mentor, and I'm also founder of Spark Succeed. So I've got an amazing guest here today joining us from the sunny climes of Spain. So I will talk a bit about that later. But this podcast is where I have conversations with smart and savvy business owners, thought leaders, and people doing really amazing things around the globe. So today I'm delighted to welcome my guest, who is co-founder of Cyber Alarm, of ETIO video agency, and also really interestingly, which is I think where we got connected, he set up lockdowngardener.co.uk, which was supplying garden essentials during lockdown when we're all stuck in and desperate for something to do in our gardens. So I'm really pleased to welcome Ashley Pollak to the podcast today. So hi Ashley, how are you?
Hi, thanks Liz, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to talking to you. You've sent me a few questions in advance that I've been cogitating, so yeah, it would be great to talk to you. Thank you for the invitation.
Brilliant. And for those of the people watching and listening who aren't watching on YouTube, do you want to describe where you're working from today?
I'm not trying to make you jealous because you're wearing your lovely sparkly jumper and your room's all beautifully painted, but I am sitting in a co-working space on the island of Ibiza, surrounded by banana trees and palm trees and various things. So I'm working from a place called The Hub, which I've been going back and forth between Ibiza and London for the last few years. I hadn't been here for a year during lockdown. My car got towed by the police, etc. And The Hub was originally a space that was set up by a fantastic team, Sam, Rick, Kelly, and there were about 50, 60 people. When I left, there were about 80. There's now 300. So it was originally a building above a restaurant, and then they took over the restaurant and they took over the outside space. So it's kind of a members club co-working space. And there's really been a fascinating, you can see the trend for people realizing that remote work, you know, it's become normalized, not just for people like me, but people who are working for companies, and people are moving here in droves. I imagine it's happening in other places in the world. So I'm very privileged and lucky to be here and surrounded by, you know, some fascinating people who are setting up really interesting businesses or writing or all sorts of things, tech guys and girls, people who are doing stuff around sustainability and farming. So it's a really, really interesting mix, very inspiring.
It's great that co-working space, you know, offers you the chance to sort of have that insight into other industries and people doing things, entrepreneurs. So, you know, I'm sure that I know you know, when we've met before, I know you're particularly interested in sort of new business ideas and everything. So there's probably a good spot for you to work from. Aside from the sunshine.
Yeah. I mean, it's also nice just to chat to someone and be able to have a 20-minute coffee and actually help them with some ideas, you know, that kind of networking element. It doesn't take a lot of time to add value, and people are definitely doing that to me. So I mean, I've always sought out places like this. So in London I was part of an incubator at Ravensbourne University. I was very lucky to get on part of a similar thing at UCL, but I was a member of the Institute of Directors, the Hospital Club, the Ministry, which I don't know if people have heard of, Ministry of Sound, the Members Club. So I've always sought spaces like that. But yeah, it's a fantastic place to be based.
Brilliant.
And it's sunny.
Tell us a little bit about what you do, because you're involved in a number of different businesses. So do you want to sort of describe your, you know, career journey, you know, and your interest and how you got to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely in the last few years, there's been a pivot in my career. I'm 40 this year, and I don't know if it's not a midlife crisis because I'm quite enjoying it. I think I've really shifted my focus from what I've spent my career doing, which is coming up with ideas and campaigns for brands and businesses, and particularly around video campaigns. That's what ETIO still does. So we're working, for example, at the moment on a project for the British Museum. We work with the Design Council, lastminute.com, Marks and Spencer, quite broad. My shift has been, how can I take my skill set for creating and connecting people together to build businesses that I'm passionate about, to grow businesses and to, you know, see that value. Because always with ETIO, I've been one stage removed from growth. It's always been producing a really nice cinema trailer for the British Museum, but I'm not selling the tickets. So how that is implemented is out of my hands. And so it's lovely to be rolling my sleeves up on a number of enterprises. And even today, just before this call, I was reaching out to another startup that I think is super exciting, and just providing some mentoring advice even, but I want to keep talking to them because I think what they're doing is fantastic. So so I worked in advertising out of university. I went to film school, and then I sort of felt a bit disconnected from the creative process, so I worked as a camera trainee for BBC Local News. Loved that, but that didn't have the strategic element, so I ended up at Marks and Spencer doing this strategy job, and then that's where I started essentially what ETIO became, which was what was ETIO? I'm trying to remember what it was. It's basically about using storytelling to engage people with brand stories, I guess. So Marks and Spencer, it was around their Plan A strategy, their sustainability strategy. And the first project we did was a TV show, online TV show for Millie's Cookies and all their social media content. And then it kind of developed from there. BP, we did a thing for them over the Olympics, and on from there. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 15 years, I think. I noticed the other day on Vimeo we had 1,000 or 1,100 films on there, so we've done quite a lot of stuff. I've done my 10,000 hours. And then when my son came along a couple of years ago, that's when I started to make this shift.
And obviously in lockdown, a lot of people's focus changed. There was the requirement to change in their business. But you, along with a few others, started up a new business, didn't you? Which was totally different from what you do now. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey the last 2 years. I mean, the first dramatic shift I did was getting involved with my business partner, Dominic, in cyber alarm. So that really came out of this desire to want to build something. So that was like a year and a half ago. We started our conversations and started to build this platform that alerts you when you've been hacked or when you're vulnerable to being hacked. It's a platform for small business at an affordable monthly level, similar to paying for zero each month, something you don't have to sort of think about a lot. So I was developing that business, and when lockdown started, really focusing down on that, because ETIO was kind of mothballed by lockdown. It was very hard to film, obviously, although we carried on a few projects. And Cyberlarm was great, but it's been a bootstrap business, so I've put money into the business. I haven't been paid anything. So I needed a way to make money, and so Lockdown Gardener came out of two things really. One, there was a chap who worked for me at ETIO, a camera operator, cinematographer. He was delivering fruits and veg, and that was going quite well. We'd originally done a film at Covent Garden Market, and he kind of went back to those contacts. And then, I mean, I think people listening to this might have seen the same thing as me. There was this moment, wasn't there, where everyone was connected to their communities. So we had this WhatsApp street group, and suddenly I knew everyone on my street and what was going on with different, someone at this house that needed something and someone at this house that I could help, and trading furniture. And I know Olio as a business, I know about them. They've grown exponentially next door. Facebook groups, Facebook community groups. And someone shared a link to a business that was delivering plants to people. And I looked at the website and I thought, it was almost like be grateful for what you can get. It wasn't that inspiring. It was like, if you'd like some plants. So because all these plants were going to waste, because nurseries had furloughed their staff and things were going on the scrap heap. And my wife was previously the marketing director of Wyville Garden Centres, and I had done some film work in that area and worked with a garden consultant called Jonathan, who was a horticulture guy born and bred. When he was at school, it was either agriculture or horticulture, and he thought horticulture sounded a little bit less strenuous. So I spoke to Justine. I said, I think there's something in this, like, people need plants, they don't need films at the moment. And Jonathan knew the growers. And so that was Tuesday. We built the website Wednesday, Thursday, talked to the suppliers on Friday, launched on Saturday, just with posts on WhatsApp groups and local community stuff. And by Monday, I think we had 240 orders. So it's, and then we had to wait for the plants. I think by the time we did our first delivery, we had nearly 360, 400 orders. Yeah. So we had 6 vans, my neighbour, a friend, someone who'd just come back from travelling who heard about what we were doing. We got a golf club's car park to have all the plants delivered, and took us 5 hours to sort them the first week, because our positioning was about hand selecting plant collections. So we went to a lot of effort to curate a Chelsea collection, a shade collection. And then we got on with it. First week was a bit of a disaster. We had 70 redeliveries, I think, and we had a van that broke down. But we just kind of made it happen. And it was very helpful to me, because I'd worked on cyber alarm, but I still, in my gut, I was unsure how I would actually sell anything.
Yeah.
As I'd always been disconnected from it, and suddenly Lockdown Gardener showed me that you can have an idea and just go with it and fix as you go, and make something really successful. And so that has definitely driven my motivations around cyber alarm now, and the success that we're striving for.
And I saw a really good TEDx talk, just a very short one, someone had done in the US that had done research on what's the one factor that makes startups successful, and number one was timing. And I think, you hit that exactly right, because you said if you'd have waited, even like a few weeks or a month later, then things had started to change quite quickly. So
yeah, there's two sides to that. If we'd have launched 2 weeks earlier, we'd have made twice as much money, and if we'd have launched 2 weeks later, because there are a couple of competitors who did, and just looking at their reviews, we've got 54.7 star 5-star reviews. One of these competitors has 5.
Yeah.
So they launched a bit later, they thought about it a bit more. The interesting thing will be, what do we do next year?
Yeah.
So we're thinking about how we're going to evolve the business. It's definitely something. Spring is the time for gardening. That's when all of the business happens. So we're planning for that for next year.
Amazing. There might be a call from like Ibiza, like palms or something, definitely.
Yeah. I think next year I want to add the most value I can, and that doesn't necessarily mean being a driver like I was last year. This year, sorry. I mean, I was trying. My son, who's 4, when I asked him what did I do for a job, he said I was a delivery driver, and I taught him the word entrepreneur. So next year I kind of just being a bit more strategic. How can we grow the business, and how can we maybe even hire in the team to do it, and I won't earn as much money from it, but we'll scale the business. So
So sort of thinking back, obviously there's some themes that are coming out, that sort of inquisitive and, liking to be in the sort of incubation stage of startups. So what would you say is the sort of biggest factor in your success?
I guess with the agency world that I've been in, it's about multitasking on a lot of different problems, solving a lot of problems, I guess. And so in terms of business, and let's be honest, this pivot's happened more recently. I've done a lot of successful campaigns, but I haven't built a lot of successful businesses in the long term. But I think the main thing is my attitude is why not rather than what if. Is that right? Why not rather than what if? So, what's the worst that could happen? Just give something a go and go with it, and don't dwell on it too much. Just jump in and get started. I guess the other part of that is also being prepared to let go just as easily. And that can be very challenging with ETIO. We've now moved to a completely freelance model, moved out of our office, sold half our kit, and literally 6 months earlier I wanted to scale and employ more people. So that's just as important. Letting go when stuff is failing and isn't working, but embracing the risk of jumping in and giving something a go and sort of fixing it as you go. Hopefully that will prove and reap its rewards in the coming years.
Yeah, definitely. And, the importance, I talk a lot about the, importance of sort of following your heart and doing something that really interests you. And it's obvious that, you're getting involved in, different business areas, but bringing your skills into that. And is that, have you felt that shift? Do you feel like you're sort of following the true calling now in terms of the sort of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, cyber alarm. Now, I'm not an IT guy. I'm not super technical. I understand computers, but I had no interest in pursuing a career in cybersecurity. But the heart of my involvement in that business was Dominic is a senior IT director board level. Hopefully you can hear me, someone talking behind me. He had noticed that he was spending an awful lot of money in those big companies on cybersecurity, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds. And yet there was this exponential growth in cyber attacks on small businesses. And what did they do? They don't have IT resource. They didn't have someone like him. And Dominic and I have known each other since school. And at the time we were going climbing, bouldering each week. And so he started picking my brains on this idea of, Ash, I've got this idea about cybersecurity for small business. I ran a small business. And I humoured him for weeks and weeks, just throwing in some marketing ideas, but really thinking this has no relevance to me. Who's going to be attacking a business like mine? And then my business got attacked. I had a cyber attack, which Dominic assures me wasn't him. But essentially, all of my email, my website, everything went offline for 4 days in the end. Dominic managed to fix it. And it turned out that 4 months earlier, someone had hacked into my domain hosting and had put another website on my hosting that they were spamming people and scamming people to put in bank details. So I got what I now understand a bit more about technically. I got blacklisted around the world. There's global blacklists for email and for websites. And when I got on 14 of them, everything stopped working. And so suddenly, I think that's the key with businesses in terms of having a passion for it. It came from the problem. Like, I don't want that to happen again. And what could have stopped that from happening? And so Cyber Alarm, the platform that we've built is this alert service that lets you know when you've been hacked or you're vulnerable. So with Cyber Alarm, I'd have been informed 4 months earlier. Ashley, ETIO is on this blacklist. You might want to look into why that's happened. And so we've been building it for 1.5 years. About 8-9 months into our journey, we realized that we needed some expertise in terms of engineering and actually building these tests. And so Matt came on as a third partner, Matt Joyce, and he's been transformative because his background is working for big corporates on their cybersecurity, actually building the technology. And it's been super fun just creating something from nothing. And literally last week we went live. So you can now go on the website and run a free teaser scan. And we're tweaking and making sort of final refinements, and the proper launch that we're doing is in about a month's time. So we're doing a survey and a report, and been doing video, obviously, running a video company, finding personal stories. And I'm super excited about, in that case, sort of helping small businesses to change their perceptions and to educate, as well as provide this product that I think, well, I don't just think will make them significantly more secure.
I think that's so important because, you talked about your son thinking you're a delivery driver, but, as small business owners, we're often our own IT department, our own, delivery, etc. So, having something like that's really great. And the free scan is a really good resource. So what would you say on a sort of daily or weekly basis are some of your success habits?
To be productive, you mean?
Yeah.
So I found it a bit harder moving here. I've been super productive here, but in a less ordered way. One of my biggest learnings, when my son came along, sorry, I think my speakers have jumped. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Jumping across. When my son came along, I got, I think, a bit distracted from ETIO. Suffered, and really suffered. I mean, I ended up getting into debt with the business and getting credit cards to pay salaries, and so I had to contract it right back to me again from 5 people, and then I built it up again. And one of my key shifts there was realizing how much processes are significant to having a successful enterprise, both on a personal level and with business. So we instigated a lot of systems and processes for being efficient in the time that we spent on projects. We realized we were being paid for a week's work and working for 2 weeks. So just the communication of that, etc. So I think for me personally, I've worked with mentors and coaches. Having a brain dump at the beginning of the week, ideally on a Sunday rather than a Monday morning, just thinking about everything you've got to work on, but then taking that that focus, like what is the one thing I need to do today that's probably the hardest thing that I want to put at the bottom of my pile that I'm going to put first. And I guess especially for me, working on lots of different things, sort of blocking time and going, right, this is my focus. So yeah, I think that's it. Having some systems and processes and using technology can really help in those things. And we tested a lot, like using Slack or Discord or tools to help with communication. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, and that sort of focusing on that sort of priority piece, that you don't, that something this is going to be quite tough, and not necessarily getting busy with all the little quick, easy tasks when you realise suddenly you've done 3 days worth of quick, easy tasks that actually aren't adding that much value. So I think, don't they say eat the frog first in the day and then get on with the smaller tasks. So I think that's really important. So
the other thing is reading a lot. I sort of had a bit of a break from it now, but for a while I was kind of devouring everything I could in terms of different approaches and different ways of doing things. And I've taken a little bit of each of those, like The Power of Why, Simon Sinek. I mean, I think that's influenced this understanding that my why is changing and how to embrace that. And like, what's the book about habits?
Habits of Highly Successful People, is that?
No, it's I'll share the link with you after.
Yeah, we'll include the link in the notes.
Yeah, changing these little habits can make transformative difference to what you're doing as well. So
is that the thing with the Olympic cycling team where you just change slight small tweaks and then it makes a massive difference?
Yeah, so with the new business strategy for SEO, I was very much doing that. Let's try this, test this, like these incremental changes. So I've tested and tried lots of things.
That's great. So if you could sort of start it all over again, what do you think you would do differently, if anything?
What do you mean start it all over? Life or career?
Career, I think. Let's focus on career before we get to the life conversation.
I'm very much of the opinion, because I really like to mentor young people, so I'm involved in young enterprise and I've done internships and the like. I'm very much of the opinion that you can't make any mistakes in your life, and that it's a journey. So I don't have any regrets of any decision I made or any wrong path I took, because I think it got me to this point. I think maybe the only thing is I feel like I'm now embracing my entrepreneurial side, whereas before I've always liked creating stuff. And I sort of focused in on that. I think maybe earlier in my career, embracing that creativity and that idea generation could build my own businesses. And maybe embracing that earlier would have been good. I mean, if I think back to school, I was one of those kids who was doing stuff with the tuck shop at school and selling sweets at a premium, or getting bangers back from France and selling them. So I had that kind of entrepreneurial thing back then, and then I maybe lost sight of that a little bit. So yeah, embracing that earlier might have meant that I'd made a bit more money by now, but hey, I'm really happy with where I'm at. So I think the most important thing is not just following your passion, because I don't think that's necessarily achievable for everybody, but definitely just making decisions and not being afraid of going after something. The worst that happens is it doesn't work and you pivot and do something else. So yeah,
brilliant. So obviously you've been reading a lot of books, and I'm sure you've sort of rubbed shoulders with a lot of different sort of amazing people in business. So what do you think's been the best piece of advice that you've received about success? in your life?
Just because it occurs to me, it's not a piece of advice, but it was a lyric in a song that I had written on the wall in my office, and actually got involved in this other business just recently, and I was telling Stephen about the same quote. It's a Divine Comedy song, and it says, fate doesn't hang on a wrong or right choice, fortune depends on the tone of your voice. Yeah, and I think definitely that's a sort of philosophy that I've followed.
Yeah.
So that's a song lyric. And then I was very lucky that I was introduced to, I think, my most influential mentor, who I never met, who was an ad man in 60 San Francisco called Howard Gossage. I got introduced to a book about him, and he was transformative for me in terms of my philosophy in life. And I ended up going out to America and meeting a lot of people that he worked with, and filming different interviews about him, which are on a website, howardluckgossage.com, but I noticed the other day the website's down, so Cyber Alarm told me, so I need to fix that. But he was very much, he was an ad guy, but he understood that if you tell really interesting stories, people read what interests them, and sometimes it's an ad, was one of his sayings. It's that kind of, we should all be striving to make life better, even if we're an ad man, and to do really high quality work, and to work with people that you love what they're doing, and where you can make a difference to them. And so he was very transformative, and I was very lucky that I got to know a lot of people who've now died, who were in their 70s then, who were taking life lessons from these amazing people. That was a brilliant part of my journey. So yeah, be open to meeting cool and interesting people and learning from them. I think that's been pretty fundamental to me.
Yeah, and probably as a videographer, very similar to being a podcaster, is, you know, you can go and sort of approach people that you're really interested in, and, you know, you feel like you sort of got that open door to you know, knock on their door and say, I'd really love to speak to you. And, you know, that's why I love what I do, and it's obviously come out with your video work.
Yes.
That you can.
Yeah, I think just generally in life, I've met a lot of interesting people by just reaching out and saying, I'm really inspired by this thing you're doing, or this thing you did, and I'd love to talk to you if you've got 15 minutes. I've got an intern who's working for me at the moment who's thinking about a career in law, and he was like, I'm not quite sure. And I said, well, do you know anyone who's done what you want to do? And he said, well, maybe some family friends. I said, find the firm that you would love to work for that is doing exactly what you want, and reach out to someone on LinkedIn and say, I'm applying to your company, and I'd be really, if you've got 15 minutes just to share some thoughts. I mean, maybe, yeah, probably quite a lot of people are too busy and wouldn't reply, but I bet you some of them would, because it's really nice to think that someone wants to learn from your life lessons. And so, yeah, I'd strongly encourage that, and I can see why you love doing these podcasts in a similar way.
Absolutely. So if people want to find out a bit more about what you're doing, where's the best place for them to go to find you, find some more information?
Yeah, so probably connecting with me on LinkedIn. I've got a drill in the background now. There's drilling going on. So if you look me up, Ashley Pollak on LinkedIn, I'm always interested in connecting with interesting people, and that's probably where I post the most about what's going on, like big on this podcast will be going up today. And cyberalarm.org is the cybersecurity business. ETIO.co.uk is my video company. And well, Liz, I was saying just before we get going that I've got you to thank for the latest enterprise I've got involved in, which is Hi Right Now, which is hirightnow.co. You can tell the listeners why you think it's amazing, but I've got involved in that business because I think what they've created is really, really interesting in terms of connecting together change makers, people who are wanting to do things or who are creating really interesting stuff. Through one-to-one sort of speed networking on video. So yeah, keep an eye on that because I'm busy working with Stephen and the other co-founders on the positioning and framing of that business so that we can scale it. So yeah, I think that's all the co.uk's and co's and
I'll
web
make sure I
addresses.
include all the links in the notes. We can direct people. But yeah, so yeah, Hi Right Now is something that I do. You know, I've been involved in fairly recently. That is sort of almost like a speed dating, networking opportunity to meet other founders, and people, investors, etc. It's literally, you know, 5 minutes per person over an hour. It's really quick and easy way to meet people in different arenas. And for someone like you, Ashley, who's interested in, you know, potentially a lot of different business areas, it's perfect. So, you know, it's definitely something to check out. We'll include the link below. But thanks, Ashley. It's been amazing to speak to you. I am very jealous of the palm trees behind you, and I've got my thick jumper on here.
I'm sorry, you have to come out at some point. You definitely meet some interesting
I know,
folks.
you did this to me last time in the meeting when you were sat outside in the sun. So, but yeah, thanks. It's been great to hear a bit more about the businesses that you're involved in. And if you've been inspired by today, join me for the next episode where I'll be joined by another amazing business owner, thought leader, and people doing amazing things around the globe. And if you have been inspired, you want to spark your own success, then why not book in a call with me at sparksucceed.co.uk, and we can talk all about your startup and sparking success in your established business. So Ashley, I'm going to have to go. You are making me feel too jealous being in Ibiza.
It's a pleasure to talk to you, Liz. I'll look forward to speaking to you soon.
Take care. Bye.